The CyberWire podcast is made possible in part by listeners like you who contribute to our Patreon page. You can learn more at patreon.com/thecyberwire. Haste may make for brazen but ineffectual influence operations. Metadata evidence of Fancy Bear's pause in unmarked emails. North Korea is thought to be paying for its advanced weapons programs with cyber bank heists. Parasari joins Mirai in the IoT botnet world. Should you be on the lookout for Pegasus on your Android device? Microsoft patches an RCE flaw in its malware protection engine. And SS7 protocol weaknesses defeat two-factor authentication. It's time to take a moment to tell you about our sponsor, Recorded Future. If you haven't already done so, take a look at Recorded Future's Cyber Daily. We look at it. The CyberWire staff subscribes and consults it daily. The web is rich with indicators and warnings, but it's nearly impossible to collect them by eyeballing the internet yourself, no matter how many analysts you might have on staff. And we're betting that however many you haven't got enough. Recorded Future does the hard work for you by automatically collecting and organizing the entire web to identify new vulnerabilities and emerging threat indicators. Sign up for the Cyber Daily email to get the top trending technical indicators crossing the web: cyber news, targeted industries, threat actors, exploited vulnerabilities, malware, and suspicious IP addresses. Subscribe today and stay ahead of the cyber attacks. Go to recordedfuture.com/intel to subscribe for free threat intelligence updates from Recorded Future. That's recordedfuture.com/intel. And we thank Recorded Future for sponsoring our show. Major funding for the CyberWire podcast is provided by Cylance. I'm Dave Bittner in Baltimore with your CyberWire summary for Tuesday, May 9th, 2017. France's presidential election is over and Emmanuel Macron is preparing to take office, but postmortems continue on the influence operations that released a large number of hacked emails and some apparent fabrications just before French media entered their legally mandated pre-voting blackout period. The leaked material has yet to turn up anything observers find particularly scurrilous or discreditable, and the influence operations seem to have amounted to little more than tendentious jeering memes on social media. Thus, the campaign seems to have been ineffectual. Security firm Flashpoint has told the press that the whole hack and release effort was both brazen and hasty, and the haste manifested itself in comparatively poor preparation and output. Macron emerged as a serious contender quite late in the campaign cycle, his candidacy gaining traction as the principal center-right alternative to Marine Le Pen, and the National Front was effectively sidelined by scandal. Thus, whoever got into the emails of Monsieur Macron and his En Marche movement had only weeks to run their operation. Consider the many months in which threat actors were present in the U.S. Democratic Party's networks, and contrast the results of the Macron hack with the damaging enforced transparency Ms. Clinton's campaign suffered. While Moscow indignantly denies any involvement in the incident, circumstantial evidence still points toward Russia. Attribution to Russian services are being denounced from the Kremlin as slander and false flags. Research firm Trend Micro has maintained for some time that the operation against Macron's campaign is circumstantially but significantly similar to the one Pawn Storm, Fancy Bear that is, the GRU, conducted against the U.S. Democratic National Committee last year, and it's been publicly joined in that assessment by Flashpoint. False flags planted in the leaks are of course possibilities, if not probabilities, but German and British authorities are taking the threat of Russian information operations to their own elections very seriously. Recently retired U.S. DNI Clapper agrees and says the U.S. should expect more of the same. He also says that he and the intelligence community, whose activities he once coordinated, remain convinced that Russia did attempt to disrupt U.S. elections. Congressional investigations into those activities continues. For its own part, WikiLeaks, unchastened by l'affaire Macron, continues its Vault 7 dumps Friday, releasing Archimedes, said to be a CIA tool used to compromise devices operating within a single LAN. Two other instances of political action in cyberspace merit mention. First, ISIS is back and has reverted to its distinctively repellent propaganda of the deed, posting video it claims shows the beheading of a captured Russian officer. Russia has reacted with outrage, as has most of the rest of the civilized world, and is investigating the clip's authenticity. Second, people are wondering where North Korea is getting the money it needs to fund its nuclear and missile programs. Since it can't sell coal to China anymore, or at least not very much coal, it appears that Pyongyang is now mainly reliant on cyber theft from banks to pay for its strike ambitions. The Pegasus lawful intercept tool made the news last summer when it was discovered exploiting 3 zero-day vulnerabilities in Apple's iOS mobile operating system. Pegasus could access all sorts of data on a compromised phone, including messages, calls, emails, and logs. Apple quickly patched the 0 days that made Pegasus possible, but researchers at Lookout have discovered a new version of Pegasus, this time on Android. Andrew Blach is a security researcher at Lookout.
Right around the time when we were investigating the iOS sample in August, we started to then take a look at a variety of different identifiers, devices that were infected with Pegasus, where they were coming from, account behavior, and looking at kind of apps that were on these devices that we believed that were infected with Pegasus. And from that, we were able to correlate and look through our data and noticed a bunch of anomalous findings that we didn't see anywhere else on devices in the world. And from that, we highlighted some couple interesting apps. And then from that, we basically opened up a joint investigation with Google where we said, hey, we believe these apps may be the Android side of the product. What do you guys think? Let's continue collaborating and look at this data and see if we can go any further with it.
So in terms of regular users, because this is a lawful intercept tool, that means that it's really a targeted tool. Does that mean that day-to-day people going about their business, this isn't something that they should really be worried about? Should it be on the radar? Can other people take the technology from Pegasus and apply it to regular run-of-the-mill malware?
Yeah, that's a great point and question, actually. So with Pegasus, this type of lawful intercept technology is used in kind of very targeted cases, right? So this is not something that the general population necessarily has to worry about or will encounter in their day-to-day lives. However, like some of the similar techniques in terms of how they can grab data and stuff, definitely those can be borrowed into kind of the commodities espionage software that you see out there, right? So there's kind of different buckets of espionage software was there, where Pegasus will be like the high-end using, very targeted specific cases, where there's actually commodity malware where anyone can actually go online and buy it. And if you just do some Google searching, you can actually find many, many different products that use some similar techniques, not as advanced as the Pegasus sample, but they still try to go after the device and get the data off it, and that any user can buy, basically. And those you'll probably find more commonly, but things like Pegasus are used only strictly in highly targeted cases.
That's Andrew Blach from Lookout. A new Internet of Things botnet, Perserai, has been discovered by security firm Trend Micro. It affects internet-connected cameras, exploiting a known password-stealing bug about 1,000 models of cameras share. Trend Micro says they've run a Shodan search that found about 120,000 cameras vulnerable to Perserai. Many of the camera users, Trend Micro says, are probably unaware that their systems are even connected, let alone exposed. It's thought that Perserai will be used in much the same way Mirai was, for distributed denial-of-service attacks. Today is Patch Tuesday, but one problem couldn't wait. Microsoft late yesterday fixed a remote code execution vulnerability that Google's Project Zero found in Windows Malware Protection Engine, commonly known as MSMP Engine. Google called the bug crazy bad. The Malware Protection Engine is enabled by default in most versions of Windows. The vector that enables attackers to get into MSMP Engine can be an email, an instant message, or a visit to a link. Remote code execution becomes possible if MSMP Engine scans a maliciously crafted file. With its fix, Microsoft warned that, quote, an attacker who successfully exploited this vulnerability could execute arbitrary code in the security context of the local system account and take control of the system, end quote. The patch is also part of today's regular security update. Banks and their customers, mostly in Germany, have been hit by criminals who exploit a weakness in the Signaling System Number 7 messaging protocol, also known as SS7, to bypass two-factor authentication. The crooks have enjoyed some success, so watch your SMS messaging. It's worth noting that this isn't an exploit that gains a hacker initial access. Rather, it bypasses the final line of defense. To get that far, the criminals first need to get the banking customer's username, password, and telephone number. But those, alas, are often gettable. So when the SS7 exploit enters, it's Katie bar the door. As our sponsors at E8 Security will tell you, bliss is not only knowing what's going on in your networks, but being able to distinguish the goodness from the badness. That's their promise for their behavioral analytics, and they're willing to show you too. So go to e8security.com/joyride for a small-scale checkout where you can see for yourself. Their behavioral analytics platform gives you insight into every stage of the attack lifecycle across your network, users, and endpoints, even those often overlooked little things in the Internet of Things. The bad actors can spoof an identity, they can steal a credential, but their crimes will betray them. That's what behavioral analytics can do for you. You can check it out for yourself at e8security.com/joyride. Don't let the data trees get in the way of seeing the risk forests, and enjoy the ride. And we thank E8 for sponsoring our show. And I'm pleased to be joined once again by Joe Kerrigan. He's from the Johns Hopkins University Information Security Institute. Joe, I was speaking to a security researcher recently who was talking about people's ability to hack into TVs. And one of the things he brought up was this notion of within your home network, basically segmenting it, having a separate Wi-Fi network for your IoT devices.
Right.
Versus, your regular browse, your laptops, your phones, your regular web browsing. What's your take on that?
I think it's a great idea. The only issue I see with it is it's not something every layman is going to have the ability to do. It's going to,
right.
It might be out of reach of guys or girls like my parents, for example.
Sure.
They're probably not going to be able to do this. And my parents actually do have a smart TV in their house. And it would be nice to be able to segment it. So it would be simple enough to do. You could either have a piece of equipment that can handle the VLAN or perhaps have a guest network segmentation, or you can actually buy two pieces of hardware and have one piece of hardware handle the Internet of Things products in your house, like your TVs, your thermostat, or whatever, and have the other piece of hardware that you control handle your Wi-Fi network for your family's devices.
Yeah, this is something we did in our house for a while, just sort of to control access for the kids,
Right.
to keep them from being on the network at all hours of the day and night. We had a separate network set up for them that had time restrictions on it, and then one for my wife and I that was unrestricted.
Right.
That was actually hidden. It didn't broadcast its name, so they didn't even know it was there. And
that's great.
Yeah,
That's perfect.
Because if they knew it was there, sure, they would certainly crowdsource a solution to hack into it.
Right. Absolutely. So I've been thinking about doing this as well, simply because my ISP is Verizon, and I think last time we were talking and you asked if I had any IoT devices in my house, and my immediate response was, "Oh no, I don't have any of those." And then you asked, "Well, what about your cable boxes?" And I went, "Oh yeah, those are essentially just little Linux boxes that sit on my network.
They creep in."
Exactly. So, these things, you don't even think about what you have as an IoT device.
Right. We have a television that
Right.
that can run Netflix, can run Spotify, it can run apps. So and it's on the Wi-Fi network.
That's right. And my daughter has one of those as well that she uses as a streaming device and a computer monitor.
So again, as we talk about, you and I talk about over and over again, is attack surface.
Exactly.
And so if you can separate the attack surface of all these IoT devices.
Right. And now if somebody compromises one of your IoT devices, and these things never get updated.
Right.
Right. Then that's the problem with them. So if if somebody compromises my IoT device, it's isolated on a network, and the only thing it's going to have access to is other IoT devices, things that I might not consider to be critical. I'm certainly not going to store my data on that part of the network.
Right. All right. Good advice as always, Joe Kerrigan. Thanks for joining us.
My pleasure.
And that's the CyberWire. Thanks to all of our sponsors who make the CyberWire possible, especially to our sustaining sponsor, Cylance. To find out how Cylance protects you using artificial intelligence, visit Cylance.com. If you enjoy the CyberWire every day, we hope you'll consider leaving a review for us on iTunes. It is one of the best ways that you can help other people find our show. And of course, you can show your support for the CyberWire by supporting us on Patreon. Visit patreon.com/thecyberwire to find out about how to become a contributor and all of the benefits we've put together for those who give. The CyberWire podcast is produced by Pratt Street Media. Our editor is John Petrick. Social media editor is Jennifer Iben. Technical editor is Chris Russell. Executive editor is Peter Kilpie. And I'm Dave Bittner. Thanks for listening.